My wife and I owned a cottage on Cape Cod for almost 3 decades. I hadn't set foot in it for 26 years. She drove out there 4 times a year, like clockwork, without fail. When she passed away last winter, my own son looked me in the eye and said, "Dad, just dump that worthless shack already." So I decided to see it one last time before I signed it away. The moment I pushed open that rusted iron gate, I stopped breathing. What I found inside that house didn't just surprise
Me?
It rewrote everything I thought I knew about my marriage. Stay with me tonight. This one gets heavy. And if you're watching, drop the city you're tuning in from. It means more than you know. My name is Walter. I'm 74 years old, and 7 months ago, I buried the only woman who ever truly saw me. Eleanor was my wife for 41 years. Now I sit alone in a brownstone on Beacon Hill while my own children treat me like a task on their weekly calendar. If you've ever felt invisible, in your own family and like an item on someone's to-do list instead of a person, I want you to know I see you. Because what I'm about to tell you took me 74 years to understand. The phone rang at 7:32 on a Tuesday morning, same as it had for 6 weeks straight. "Pop, we need to circle back on the Cape Cod situation." That was Bradley, my oldest. Flat, corporate. The voice he used on clients he thought were wasting his time. "You're hemorrhaging cash on that dump." I gripped the mug Eleanor gave me our last Christmas together, the one with our wedding photo baked into the ceramic. "It's not hemorrhaging, Bradley. Your mother adored that place. Mom's been gone over half a year, Pop. Caroline and I think it's time you started acting like a responsible adult about your assets." Caroline, my daughter, had grown just as cold as her brother. Every other day, the same lecture about budgeting, as if I were a senile old man who couldn't work a microwave. "Taxes alone are $5,200 a year," Bradley pressed. "Add insurance, heating, the seawall. You're bleeding 17 grand annually on a property you haven't laid eyes on since Reagan was president. Haven't laid eyes on." That part stung, because it was true. Eleanor had gone out there 4 times a year without skipping once. Spring, summer, October, and 1 trip every February she called her quiet weeks. She always invited me. I always had a reason not to go. Work. The country. Club. A cardiology appointment I could have easily moved. Sitting alone in that kitchen, I finally asked myself a question I'd never let myself ask before. Why had I always refused to go? "Have you even walked through the house since Mom died?" Caroline cut in. "I drove out last month, Pop, and it's a wreck. Shingles warped, gate rusted through. The whole place looks abandoned." My chest tightened. Eleanor kept that cottage spotless. If it was falling apart, that meant she really was gone. "Maybe I should drive out there," I said. "For what?" Bradley snapped. "You're 74. You have no business driving 4 hours each way to gawk at a property you're liquidating anyway. Hand it to a broker and walk away." 74. He said it like I already belonged in a coffin. The D? "Market's white hot," Carolyn added, smooth as a realtor. "Cape properties are pulling 350, 400 grand. Money that could fund assisted living when the time comes." Assisted living. They'd been sliding that phrase into every conversation for months, as if grief had also stripped me of the ability to cook eggs or read a newspaper. I'd noticed things too. The way Bradley's eyes lingered on Eleanor's pearls when we packed her. Vanity. The way Caroline quietly walked off with the heirloom silver for safekeeping. "I need time to think," I told them. "You've had 6 months," Caroline said. "How much more time could you possibly need?" 6 months. Had it really been that long since I held Eleanor's hand in that hospital bed, felt her fingers go cold? It felt like yesterday. It felt like 100 years, both at once. "Honestly, Pop, we're getting concerned about your judgment," Bradley pushed. "Yesterday you couldn't remember if you'd paid the gas bill. That one landed, because there was truth in it." Grief had wrapped itself around my mind like wet wool since Eleanor died. Some afternoons I forgot to eat. Some days I'd wander into a room and forget why. If you've ever lost someone you loved that deeply, you know exactly what that fog feels like. It isn't stupidity. It's your soul learning to walk again with one leg gone. I'll think it over, I said again. But I knew that answer wouldn't hold. Much longer. 3 weeks later, worn down by daily calls and surprise inspections, I finally caved. I'll sell the Cape, I told Bradley. The relief in his voice was instant. Too instant. That's the smart play, Pop. I've got a broker in Provincetown. Top closer, moves properties fast. Moves properties fast. That seemed to be the only thing my children valued anymore, and not meaningful, not memorable, just fast. Not once did either of them call it their mother's sanctuary. Before we list it, I want to drive out one more time, I said. There may be personal things still inside. A long pause. Pop, is that really necessary? Your mother spent a lot of her life in that house, Bradley. There might be photographs, journals, things that matter. Fine. But you're not going alone. Caroline and I will come help you triage everything. The very last thing I wanted was my children pawing through Eleanor's private belongings, deciding on the spot what was treasure and what was trash. They'd already done that with her closet here in Boston. I need to do this myself, I said. What if the car breaks down? What if you have a cardiac event? Cardiac event. They'd been weaponizing that phrase for months, like I was a machine waiting to short circuit. Yes, I was 74. Yes, I took blood pressure medication. I was not an invalid. I'll be fine, Bradley. I've been driving longer than you've been breathing. That's exactly what worries me, Caroline cut in, clearly listening on the extension. You've been so scattered. Scattered. Their polite word for thinking grief had broken my brain. And maybe they weren't entirely wrong. But this trip felt necessary in a way I couldn't explain. I'm going, I told them, more steel in my voice than I felt. Either you trust me with this or you don't. Of course we trust you, Pop, Bradley said too fast. Just check in when you leave and when you arrive. Like I was 16 with a learner's permit. But I agreed because arguing was exhausting and because some small soft part of me still wanted to believe their concern came from love, not inheritance math. The night before I left, I sat in Eleanor's reading nook with her old photo albums. Our courtship at Boston University, our wedding at Old North Church, the kids climbing onto my lap at bedtime. But in the more recent albums, something nagged at me. The photos grew sparse, and in nearly every one, Eleanor was alone, on the cottage porch with a novel on her knees, kneeling in a vegetable patch I had no memory of her ever planting, smiling a smile I barely recognized. Softer. Lighter. The way someone smiles when they've stopped performing for anyone. When was the last time she'd smiled at me like that? I packed the Buick the next morning the way Eleanor always did. Water. Granola bars. A first aid kit. The 4-hour drive wore me down more than I expected. By the time I crossed the Sagamore Bridge, the late afternoon sun was painting the marsh grass copper and gold. Eleanor had tried to describe this coastline to me 100 times. I'd never really listened. Now I understood why it had pulled at her so hard. The turnoff was marked by a weathered cedar sign. Salt Meadow Lane. I'd paid for that sign 15 years ago and never once seen it in person. Eleanor had handled every detail of that cottage, herself for decades. As the cottage came into view, half hidden behind beach plum bushes, my chest tightened with dread. Caroline had been right about the neglect, at least from the road. Faded shingles, a rusted gate. I parked, sat there a moment listening to the surf, and finally walked to the gate. My hands were shaking. Whatever waited on the other side was going to rearrange everything I thought I knew. The hinges screamed as I pulled the gate open. And then I froze, because what I saw was not abandonment, not even close. The yard was breathtaking. Loved. Marigolds and black-eyed Susans in tidy rows, fresh-cut grass. New cedar planks replacing the warped porch steps. Someone was living here. My first instinct was to call the police. We'd had squatter trouble years back. But then I saw it. A wind chime hanging from the porch railing. I knew. That wind chime. Eleanor bought it at the Wellfleet flea market 4 summers ago. I remembered grumbling about the $18. Children's laughter drifted from behind the cottage. A woman's voice, calling out gently in Spanish. My high school Spanish was 58 years rusty, but I understood enough. I walked up the, front steps, heart pounding in my throat. The door was painted soft buttercup yellow, Eleanor's favorite color. Terracotta pots of rosemary and basil flanked the entrance. Before I could knock, the door swung open. A small woman stood there, mid-50s, dark hair streaked with silver, a wooden spoon still in her hand. When she saw me, her face went white. "Senor Walter," she whispered. She knew my name. "I'm sorry," I managed. "I think there's some misunderstanding. This is my property." Tears welled instantly in her eyes. "Senora Eleanor, she passed away," I said. 7 months ago." The woman covered her mouth and let out a sob. The deep kind you only make for someone who truly mattered to you. Nobody had cried for Eleanor like that, not even our own children. They'd cried at the wake, composed and acceptable. This woman cried like the world had cracked open. "Please," she said, waving me inside. "Come in, I'll explain. My name is Lourdes Reyes." Inside, the bones of the house were the same. The fieldstone fireplace, the exposed beams. But the soul was different. Family photos on the mantel, children's crayon drawings on the fridge, a basket of yarn beside a worn armchair. "You've been living here," I said. Not a question. Lourdes nodded, tears streaming. 16 years, Senora Eleanor. She saved my family. 16 years? My brain refused to do the math. "She brought us here after Hurricane Wilma," Lourdes explained, sinking into the chair. "We lost everything in Florida. The house, my husband's shop. We came north with nothing. We were sleeping in a shelter in New Bedford, and Senora Eleanor, and she was volunteering there. She found us. Hurricane Wilma, 2005. I remembered Eleanor driving down that fall saying she needed to check on the cottage. She'd come back and said everything was fine, minor damage, already handled. She never said one word about a homeless family in a shelter. She told us we could stay until we got on our feet," Lourdes went on. "Then my Tomas got sick, pancreatic cancer, and Senora Eleanor said we were family now. This was our home too." I sat down heavily. My legs had simply stopped working. 4 years he fought, Lourdes said. Senora Eleanor helped. But the medical bills insurance wouldn't cover. She drove him to chemo when I had to work the cleaning shift at the inn. She was, how do you say, an angel. Eleanor. Generous with the church food drive, but careful, practical with our money. She had been quietly holding up an entire family for 16 years. "Where is your husband now?" "He passed 3 years ago," Lourdes said softly. "Same sickness that took Senora Eleanor. The same sickness." The room tilted. "Wait," I said. "Eleanor had cancer?" Lourdes's eyes went wide, her hand flying to her mouth. You did not know?" "Know what?" "She fought cancer for 3 years, Senor Walter, pancreatic, same as my Tomas. She went for treatment at Dana-Farber's clinic in Hyannis. She said she did not want to worry you. She did not want to be a burden. I have to stop the story right here, because if you've ever gotten news that rewired everything you thought was true, you know exactly what happened to me in that chair. My wife had pancreatic cancer for 3 years and told me nothing. While I complained about her little vacations, she'd been driving herself to chemotherapy, recovering in this cottage, cared for by a woman I'd never met. The 4 trips, a year," I said slowly. "That's why she came." Lourdes nodded. "Every 3 months. For the scans, the treatment cycles. She stayed with us. We took care of her. She was like a mother to my children." Children. I looked around that living room, with new eyes, the crayon drawings, small sneakers by the back door. "How many do you have?" 3. Daniel is 23, a mate on a fishing charter out of Chatham. Isabella is 19, studying nursing at the community college. Mateo is 15, plays soccer. They've lived in this cottage their whole lives. Daniel was 7 when we came. Isabella was 3. Mateo was a baby. I tried to picture Eleanor here every 3 months, not for peace and quiet, as I'd always assumed, but for chemotherapy. Surrounded by children who climbed into her lap while she fought a disease, she kept locked behind her teeth at home. Why didn't she tell me? She said you had enough worry, Lourdes answered. She said you are a good man, but you would not understand why she needed this place. She called it her secret garden, somewhere she could be sick without making everyone sad. A secret garden, not real estate, not an investment. A sanctuary where she could finally be vulnerable without burdening the people she loved. The money, I said. Utilities, feeding all of you. Where did that come from? Lourdes looked uncomfortable. She had a job, part-time, at a little gallery on Commercial Street in Provincetown. She said her paycheck stayed here, for the house, for us. My wife, who I thought was taking pleasant little vacations 4 times a year, had been working a part-time job to support another family while fighting cancer alone. Senor Walter, Lourdes said carefully, your children, they know about us. Something in my chest went cold. What do you mean? After Senora Eleanor passed, they came here. They told us we had to leave, that you were selling and we had no right to stay. The son was very angry. He said we were stealing from the family. The daughter was less angry, but she said we had to go before you found out anything, Bradley. And Caroline knew. They knew about Lourdes, about the children, about Eleanor's cancer, and they had tried to quietly evict a grieving family before I could ever learn the truth. They had stood in my kitchen lecturing me about wasted money, knowing full well this cottage was the only home 3 children had ever had. If your blood's starting to boil right now, mine was too. But hold that feeling, because it's about to get worse. What did you tell them? I asked. We told them we would wait to talk to you first. We respected Senora Eleanor too much to leave without you knowing the truth. The screen door banged. A teenage boy walked in, Sandy, shaking out his sneakers, tall, dark-eyed, a shock of curly black hair. He froze when he saw me. Mateo, come. Meet Senor Walter, Lourdes said gently. Senora Eleanor's husband. His face shifted from caution to something like relief. Senora Eleanor talked about you all the time. She said you were a good man. She said you just needed time to understand. Understand? What? Looking at this boy my wife had loved like a grandson, I started to suspect the person who needed to understand wasn't Eleanor. It was me. Over coffee and warm pastelitos, Mateo drummed his fingers on the table, the exact same nervous habit Eleanor had. She always said you would come here someday, he said. She kept a box of letters for you, in her room. What letters? Lourdes and Mateo exchanged a glance. She wrote to you, Lourdes said, when she was scared or alone. But she never sent them. She said maybe one day she'd be brave enough. That day never came. Can I see them? Are you sure, Senor Walter? Some things, they may hurt to read. In the last hour, I'd learned my wife fought cancer alone for 3 years, secretly raised another family for 16, and that my own children had chosen secrecy over truth. How much more could a few letters possibly hold? I need to see them. Mateo led me down a hallway I hadn't walked in 26 years to a room that was unmistakably Eleanor's. Sea glass green walls. A writing desk angled to catch the morning light. Shelves of poetry and memoirs about illness I'd never seen her read at home. On the nightstand, a photo of us on our honeymoon in Bermuda 41 years ago, young, tan, violently in love. Beside it, a newer photo, Daniel, Isabella, and Mateo building a sandcastle. Lourdes appeared with a wooden box I recognized instantly. I'd built it for Eleanor in a woodworking class 30 years ago. She said she loved it. I'd never once asked what she kept inside. Take all the time you need, Lourdes said, and closed the door behind her. Inside were dozens of letters, organized by date, going back almost 20 years. The earliest were on our old monogrammed stationery. The later ones on letterhead I didn't recognize. Hyannis Cancer Care Pavilion, I picked one from 3 years back. My dearest Walter, today Dr. Patel told me the cancer is back. I asked for a few days before starting the next round, not because I won't fight, but because I need to figure out how to do this without ruining the peace you finally found in retirement. You've been happy these past months. Golf, your novels, smiling more than you have in 15 years. How could I take that from you? I know what you're thinking, that we should face this together. You're right. But you spent 40 years carrying everyone. You've earned the right to be a happy man without a wife dying in the next room. It's not because I love you less. It's because I love you too much to watch you suffer through my suffering. I have loved you every day for 38 years, even the years we felt like polite strangers sharing a hallway. Especially then. Forever yours, Eleanor. My hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled. She'd been sick, scared, fighting, for her life, alone, because she wanted to protect me from sadness. And the worst part was, she'd been right. I had been happy, oblivious, golfing while my wife drove herself to chemo. If this is hitting you tonight, go find the person next to you. Call them, text them. Don't let comfort become the reason your marriage goes silent. I picked up a second letter from just over a year ago. My dearest Walter, today was a good day. The scans show the tumors are responding. I helped Lourdes plant dahlias. Mateo taught me friendship bracelets. Isabella showed me her nursing acceptance letter. These people have become my family in a way I never expected. When I'm here, I'm not Eleanor the wife or the mother. I'm just Eleanor, a woman who likes flowers and the sound of children laughing through screen doors. This is my space, Walter. For the first time in my life, I have something that belongs entirely to me. Is that wrong? Forever yours, Eleanor. I set it down and stared at the slate-gray Atlantic. She'd been right about me in some ways, but she'd been wrong about the one thing that mattered most. I would not have been fine without her. I was not fine without her. Lourdes knocked softly. You okay, Senor Walter? Was she happy here? Truly? Lourdes thought a long moment. She was herself here. Sometimes sad, sometimes scared, but herself. At home, she said she felt like she was playing a role. Playing a role. In our own marriage. There's one more, Lourdes said. At the bottom. She wrote it just before she got too sick to come anymore. An envelope. For Walter, to be opened only if something happens to me. My hands trembled. After 41 years, I was finally about to learn what my wife really thought of the life we'd built. My beloved Walter. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and you finally found this place. I need to tell you something that will hurt. But you deserve the truth about our children, now that I won't be there to soften them. Bradley and Caroline have known about Lourdes and her family for over 2 years. Bradley found the payments, while managing my power of attorney, and hired a private investigator. When they found out, they didn't come to me. They didn't come to you. They came here, and they threatened this family. Told Lourdes she was trespassing. Threatened to call ICE. Threatened to claim she'd been stealing from us. Lourdes called me, sobbing. I drove down that night and confronted our children in this kitchen. Walter, I have never seen them so cold. Bradley said supporting Lourdes was fiscally irresponsible. When I told them how this family nursed me through chemo, he laughed and said, Mom, you're sick. You're not thinking clearly. These people are using you. Using my condition, as if cancer had made me stupid instead of exhausted. They gave me an ultimatum. Cut Lourdes off and sell the cottage, or they'd move to have me declared mentally incompetent. I chose the people who gave me everything when I needed everything. Bradley called it destroying our family legacy for people who aren't even citizens. Caroline cried and said I was choosing strangers over my own children. But Walter, they stopped being strangers years ago. They were more family than our own children had been in a long time. I made them swear not to tell you while I was alive. I didn't want you forced to choose between them and me. But now you need to know who they really are. When they pressure you to sell, It isn't concern for your finances. It's rage that outsiders might benefit from what they think is their inheritance. I've spoken with a lawyer here on the Cape, Margaret Hollister. She has everything you need. Walter, you're a good man. You worked hard. You were faithful. But somewhere along the way we became roommates, and our children learned to see relationships as ledgers. I don't blame you, and I don't blame myself anymore either. I hope you find your way back to the man you were before the world made you tired. Lourdes and her family loved me for who I was, not for what I gave them. I hope you find a family that chooses you back. All my love. Always. Your Ellie. I sat there a long time, watching the sun sink over the bay. My children hadn't just known about Eleanor's secret life. They'd tried to crush it, threatened a grieving immigrant family, emotionally blackmailed their dying mother, to protect money that wasn't even theirs yet. If you have parents, ask yourself tonight, are you treating them like people, or like an estate that hasn't been distributed yet? Because there's a difference. And the older they get, the more they can feel which one you really see them as. There was a soft knock. Isabella. Mommy says dinner's ready. If you want to eat with us, you don't have to. We always make too much food anyway. Too much food. Eleanor used to say I never made enough, that I'd spent 40 years cooking for one while she was here, part of a family that gathered around a real table every night. I'd like to eat with you, I said, standing slowly, my heart feeling like it weighed 100 pounds. At the table, Daniel stood and shook my hand. I'm sorry we couldn't meet under better circumstances. Senora Eleanor talked about you constantly. The bookcase you built her, dancing at the Charlestown Navy Yard, the canoe you carved by hand. Eleanor had kept the memory of the man I used to be alive, with pride, to strangers who became family, while I'd forgotten I ever loved making things with my hands. Through dinner, I listened to ordinary family talk, soccer, nursing clinicals, a ring Daniel was saving for. The kind of talk Eleanor and I used to have with Bradley and Caroline before they became adults who only called when they wanted something. Senor Walter, Mateo asked as Lourdes brought out flan, are you going to make us leave? 3 pairs of eyes turned to me. It's okay, I said. It's a fair question. My phone buzzed. Bradley or Caroline I knew without looking. For the first time in 7 months, I turned it off without reading it. I slept that night in Eleanor's bed. The bed where she'd recovered from chemotherapy I never knew existed. The Atlantic sounded different than I expected. Not crashing. Almost whispering. Something in my chest that had been clenched for months finally eased. In the morning, Lourdes brought coffee in Eleanor's blue seashell mug. How did you sleep? Better than I have in months. And it was true. For the first time since Eleanor died, I hadn't reached for her side of the bed all night. She slept good here too, Lourdes said. Even when she was very sick. She said, the ocean reminds her she is small, makes the sickness feel small too. Lourdes, do you want to stay here? Honestly, not out of obligation because this is your home. She looked out at the water a long moment. My children were born in Florida, but they grew up here. This is not just where we live, Senor Walter. This is where we belong. And me being here, does that feel strange? No. Senor Eleanor used to say this house was too big for one person. It needed family to make it alive again. Family. Blood didn't automatically make one. 40 years in the same brownstone hadn't guaranteed connection. Family was daily kindness, showing up. My phone had been buzzing all morning. 23 missed calls, 31 texts, all following the same arc. Concern, then irritation, then anger. The last from Bradley, 6 that morning. Pop, we know something is wrong. We're leaving Boston now. Don't do anything rash before we talk. Don't do anything rash, like honoring my wife's wishes, like treating human beings with basic dignity. My children are coming, I told Lourdes. They'll be here by lunch. Fear flashed across her face. We can leave for the day. Take the kids to my sister's. No, I said. This is your home, Lourdes. You don't run from your own home. At Eleanor's desk, among the letters, I found a business card. Margaret Hollister, estate attorney. Eleanor had been planning ahead even at her sickest. I called. Her office sat in a converted whaling captain's house in Provincetown. Margaret. Herself sharp-eyed, silver-haired, no patience for fools. Eleanor came to me 3 years ago, she said, spreading documents across her desk. She wanted to make sure Lords' family would be protected no matter what happened to her. We worked through every contingency. There was a living trust. The cottage couldn't be sold without giving Lords' family substantial notice and relocation. Assistance. There was a life insurance policy Eleanor bought specifically to fund the cottage for 10 years past her own death. Your children cannot evict this family, Margaret said. Eleanor made certain of that, but more than that, she left you options. 3 folders, 3 scenarios. Option 1, sell the cottage. Lords' family gets 6 months' notice and $75,000 in relocation help. Option 2, keep ownership. Sign a formal long-term lease protecting them as tenants. Option 3, Margaret paused. Transfer the cottage to Lords' family outright and use the life insurance to buy a smaller place nearby for myself. Eleanor had planned even for the possibility I might want to stay. She hoped you'd choose. Option 3, Margaret said. She said you'd been lost since retirement, that you needed a purpose, a family that needed you, not your money. She believed Lords and the children could give you that. If you've felt adrift since retirement, you're not alone. So many people build their entire identity around work, and when it's gone, they're just floating. Eleanor had seen that in me. She'd been planning my second life while she was dying of her first. Margaret slid over a small sealed envelope, one Eleanor asked her to give me only if I actually came here and met the family myself. Walter, if you're reading this, you've seen what real family looks like. Don't let our children's greed bury something beautiful. Choose love, choose belonging, choose the life we forgot how to give each other. All my love, Ellie. My phone rang. Bradley. Pop, where the hell are you? We're at the cottage. There. Are people here claiming they live here? I could hear Caroline shouting behind him. Mateo carefully, respectfully trying to explain. I'm handling business in town, I said. I'll be back within the hour. Sit at that table. Eat the lunch Lords is making. Listen to what they have to say. Your mother loved them. Pop, you're clearly being manipulated. I hung up. I turned the phone off. What are you going to do? Margaret asked. I looked at the documents that would make Lords' family the rightful owners of the cottage where Eleanor had faced cancer, surrounded by people who loved her without condition. I'm going to honor my wife's wishes, I said, picking up the pen. I'm going to choose the family that chose her. Imagine being 74 years old, signing your name to the truth your wife spent years writing. Imagine 41 years of missed conversations finally settling into the right place. As I signed, something shifted in me. Not grief, not anger, peace. For the first time in 7 months, I felt exactly where I was supposed to be. When I got back to the cottage, Bradley's BMW and Caroline's Audi were still in the driveway, but the energy had changed. Through the window, I saw my children sitting at Lords' table, uncomfortable but no longer hostile. Isabella showing Caroline nursing school photos, Mateo talking to Bradley with big hand gestures. Lords met me at the door, searching my face. It's done, I said, handing her the deed. This is your cottage now, legally, officially. Tears filled her eyes. Senor, Walter, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just let me stay for one more dinner as your guest. We walked in together. My children's faces shifted when they saw I wasn't carrying listings or eviction papers. I was carrying peace. For the first time in 7 months, I was home. Here's what this story taught me. The people who care most about your inheritance are rarely the people who care most about you. Watch who shows up before you're gone and who only shows up after, calculator in hand. You have rights. Financial elder abuse, including pressure to sell property, is a crime in every state. You can see an estate attorney without telling your children. You can set up a trust they can't override. The elder care locator, AARP's legal referrals and adult protective services exist for exactly this reason. Use them. Comfort in a marriage can quietly become silence, and silence can become two people mourning a marriage they're still standing inside of. Ask your spouse something real tonight, not, "How was your day?" but "What have you been carrying?" Alone lately? And the hardest lesson? Family isn't always blood. Sometimes the people who'd hold your hand at 3 in the morning aren't related to you at all. That's allowed. So tonight, do one thing. Text the person who's been chosen family to you. Tell them they matter. Don't wait until they're gone. If you're still here with me, thank you. Tell me in the comments, did Walter do the right thing? Do you think his children deserve forgiveness, and how fast? Has your own family ever fought like this over what's left behind? And tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one. And it still amazes me how far these stories travel. That night, after Bradley and Caroline drove back to Boston in stunned silence, I sat on the porch Eleanor had loved. Lourdes had given me her spare room. Tomorrow I'd start looking at small cottages nearby, not because I had to, because I wanted to. I had finally found the family Eleanor had been quietly building for me all along. This is a fictional story inspired by situations many families face, fully rewritten to bring you something original. Any resemblance to real people is coincidental. If it moved you, like, subscribe, and hit the bell. There's more where this came from. Stay kind, stay awake, and don't wait until someone's gone to find out who they really were. People who care most about you watch. Who shows up before you are gone and who only shows up after calculator in hand.